Welcome to Jesus Changes Everything, a daily podcast dedicated to providing a fresh look at the ancient and glorious truth that Jesus not only reigns, but is busy about the business of bringing all things under subjection, that celebrates the wonder and the glory that he has been given all authority in heaven and on earth. I mentioned a week or so ago that one of the blessings of adding a new segment is that it allows me an opportunity to invite back previous guests to have a different conversation. And today we have one such guest who I'm so delighted and tickled to have. By the way, you should know, all of you listeners, that you're about to hear from the man behind the curtain. That is, without this man, you wouldn't be hearing this podcast at all. His name is David Knight, and David and I met online when he asked me a few years ago to come on his podcast and to talk about my own testimony of how I came to saving faith. And we had such a wonderful conversation that we have been friends ever since. And I'm going to stop introducing him so he can say hello and I can stop talking. Welcome, my friend.
Hello. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Good. As you know, this segment is called The Gospel at Work. And so I would love for you to give our listeners a quick overview of your journey of how you have used your skill set and grown multiple channels in this manner of speaking, in helping other people learn important things. So I'm just going to give that up to you.
That's a wide old question. Thank you very much. And thanks for having me on the show as well, RC Jr. So my skill set is based around developing people and encouraging people, I think. So that's produced results from working in the supermarket and being a leader within sort of a retail environment, from being an entrepreneur and creating products and selling them retail and wholesale as well, which I did for a while. And that was a big part of my life before I was a Christian, before I became a Christian 7 years ago. And also online as well. So I've got a business where I consult and build websites for people. And you mentioned as well, I've got a podcast and a sort of a channel called Exposit the Word, where we've got a ministry where we're working through all 66 books of the Bible, where we're partnering with 66 different pastor teachers, including yourself, who taught Genesis for us, which is a fantastic project. And I've also developed a podcast recently that launched in January this year called Talk Business With as well, where we interview successful entrepreneurs and business owners from all around the world as well.
And I should have mentioned also what's coming down the pike in terms of encouragement and direction. You've also, I mean, it's not you, but you are coaching a couple of young entrepreneurs who've already had some significant success. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's been amazing. So we started home educating our two eldest sons back in September full time. Before that, we got a taster of it because of COVID, everybody was homeschooling for a while. But we've been doing it full time officially from September last year. God has just really blessed that. It's been amazing. We worked out that there was so much inefficient time in the school day, from commuting to tutor times to the boys learning lessons that we don't actually want them to learn.
Right.
By putting them out, we realised that we could actually get their GCSEs done, plus a diploma done Monday to Thursday via their mum at home, which then freed them up for Fridays with Dad to teach them what I know about business, which isn't very much. We should have already completed that by now, to be honest. But back in September, we had this idea that we was going to, just to give them transferable skills, we was going to create an online business for them. And if it stopped them ever having to do a paper round, then that would have been ideal. But they come up with an idea of, during this long day that we pretended to have a board meeting and all the pizzas in, and they come up with this brand and idea in one day called Animate Our Logo, which has been absolutely amazing, because I thought, you know, if they make £20 per month from it, then brilliant. But it's just gone on from strength to strength, praise the Lord. And you guys have got something called Shark Tank in America, right? We call that Dragon's Den in the UK. And what happened is we got the equivalent of a shark involved in the business. They picked the boys out from a social media campaign they was doing and awarded them something called an SBS prize, which gave them lots of local media attention and lots of celebrity customers who then tweeted about them, and it's just gone on from strength to strength. So whenever I need to lend a fiver now, I know where to go with those two boys.
Well, that's terrific. I know they're enjoying. By the way, they're still pretty young, right? What are their ages?
Yeah, that's right. So Harry was 12 when he created it, and Jack was 15. So yeah, they're Harry's 13 now. If he listens to this, he'll tell me off for not getting that right now. But he was 12 when he created.
He won't give you that fiver, will he?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, talk to me now. When you are, I mean, in our conversations, David, Jesus is always right there. It's one of the things that's so wonderful about you is it's not something that's in the background; it's in the foreground. But in this new endeavor, a relatively new endeavor, on talking with these businessmen, I know it's there in your heart and in your mind. But talk to us. How are you thinking when you're interacting with these folks who probably, many of them, maybe have no Christian background at all? But how are you thinking about how your salvation impacts your interaction with these business folks?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think it goes back to the whole idea in the first place. We wanted to serve people. This idea was, we come up with the idea back in December last year when we was in lockdown. I think, number 5 in the UK, and so many friends who are small business owners and entrepreneurs are struggling in the UK, having to furlough their staff, and some of them forced to close down their businesses. So knowing that there's a real issue and it's affecting people's lives so dramatically, I had the idea, because I love interviewing people in an expositive way, and I've had some, really great guests on. And some people were very nice about that and have enjoyed them. I thought, well, you know what, maybe I can use the same sort of format to interview business people and, find out how they've pivoted through COVID and get their tips as to how they've scaled from being a small business to a big business. And, some of these successful business owners we've had on are, billionaires. So, they've done a really good job of scaling their business. So I thought, if there's anything transferable in their skill set that can help small business owners, then great. So that was my intention. And then we reached out to people, obviously cold. We didn't have any back catalogue for people to listen to. And help the average listener who's never done a podcast or had the responsibility of securing guests. Talk to us a little bit about what that's like. Yeah, sure. So, I was reading Forbes magazine, and they do this thing called the Forbes 30 under 30 list each year, which is, the entrepreneurs to look out for who are under the age of 30 years old. So we both wouldn't have been on that list for many decades now. So I'm not even sure why I was looking at
many decades or many millions, either way.
Yeah. But reading this list and, saw this story about a guy in America called Michael Matochi, who, he was just a likable guy. He in his very small bio said about, he was selling lemonade from his driveway when he was, 6 years old. And there was a picture of him with a pretend mobile phone under his chin whilst he was selling lemonade. It looked like he was trading, a tiny guy. And I just thought, this seems like a great guy. And I looked him up online, and I listened to one of his other interviews and just thought, he comes across really good. And he was really open and enthusiastic about helping other people. And he mentioned in that interview that he's got his, email address and his Twitter bio. So I reached out to him, and it was really easy, one invitation and one acceptance. He said yes. But what was really amazing through that is when we launched the first pilot episode through Facebook. I mean, YouTube only got a couple of thousand views, but through Facebook, from memory, I think it got like over 110,000 downloads.
Wow.
So what's great is when you've got a pilot that's had such great coverage, it's then really easy to leverage that and use that to get other people on the show.
Gotcha.
So that was really helpful. And of course we've been told no lots of times by people or ask us again in 6 months' time, but we have also had lots of doors open for us by having all sorts of amazing guests. I mean, like we've had like Michael Jackson's bodyguard on as an example, who was also like one of his close friends as well. And why that was interesting is I wanted to know about Michael Jackson, the entrepreneur, because there's this guy that's obviously got this really unique brand, and I wanted to understand what that looked like, and obviously the way that the media was with him and all of the crazy things that have come out since. So that was a great conversation. But we've had like the founder of, do you guys have Reebok in America? You do, don't you?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So we had the founder of Reebok on, and he sold the business for like £4 billion, I think. So again, just trying to understand how these guys have been able to start off, or take a business that started off on a kitchen table, which it did in the case of Joe Foster at Reebok, to take it to an international business and be able to exit with, as a success, because knowing that a lot of people within our audience aren't in that place, and how are they going to be able to take those tips and then be able to implement them within their own business.
Well, what I'm hearing as I listen to you is a spirit that I've known in you since I've known you, this very optimistic, upbeat. You're talking to guys who've been a success. You are getting confident enough to reach out to these folks and see if they'll be willing to come on your program. It strikes me that one thing you understand that I think is probably really important for your audience to understand is that these people that you're talking to are regular people. Mm-hmm. They're not from outer space. They're people who have succeeded in the marketplace, and we know that they succeed in the marketplace by doing well, by serving their customers well. But they're just you and me, and I think when I think about you, David, I think, you just dropped this 7 years ago. I became a Christian 7 years ago. I look at you honestly, and I think I cannot imagine this man apart from the grace of God. I just can't. You just exude grace, but nevertheless, again, that's you. You're in that same place. You're the same guy who was a regular guy, and God brought you into the kingdom, and God's using you. I mean, this is staggering that you got 100,000 people downloading your inaugural episode just from Facebook. Do you? Well, I'm sure you do. When you go to bed at night, which I know is sometimes late because I send you stuff too late. When you go to bed at night, do you get that sense of God's presence with you, that He's walking with you, that He's guiding and directing you?
Of course. I am completely aware that, I am an absolute buffoon apart from God. So for the fact that He can use somebody like me and work success without God doing that for me, like it's of no merit of myself. I mean, I'm uneducated. I didn't do very well at school. Up until the point where I was a Christian, I was talking to somebody last night about it. I mean, I just love reading books now. Like, I've got like 5 or 6 open now, and I've got probably, I don't know, there's certainly lots of hundreds of books, if not thousands of books now. Not read all of them, obviously, but I just collect buying them and plan to read them one day. But before becoming saved, I'd read one book, up until I was the age of 35, right? And so I am completely aware that this is all by the grace of God in terms of how His hand has been on my life. And I think that what that does is that fosters then a response in me in terms of I'm just so grateful for that work and so dependent on it continuing that, and it happened, my prayer every time, before I speak or even before this interview, like my prayer to God is, if God doesn't carry me through this, it's going to be a complete disaster.
Uh-huh.
Like if I try and do anything in my own strength, it's not going to happen. And I'm also grateful, you know, for times when it doesn't happen, you know, when God does close a door, and just being, and when it's a no, just being thankful for that there are doors closing as well, and thankful for the doors that are opening. And I'm not clever enough or wise enough to be able to trust myself or certainly my gut feel, because we know that we can't trust our hearts, right? So
Right.
I'm just completely reliant on God to hold me tightly and guide me so that I don't wander off with my own silly ideas or my own flesh, right?
Well, that's excellent. I do believe that that trust is something that God delights to reward and to bless. I know that you could very much argue that my own scandal in my life that comes out of moments of pride and self-reliance, and it could be pride and self-reliance on things that are very good things, but they're not good when they become a distraction from the grace of God. Yeah. David, I look at professing believers, and I push back against all the time against this idea of a second blessing, where there are two kinds of Christians. There's the regular Christian, and then some people make it, then they're the Calvinists and they're special Christians, or they're charismatics and they're special Christians, or they're homeschoolers and they're special Christians, or something like that. I want to push back against that profoundly. But if I'm going to fall into that, it's going to be what happens when I see believers that just exude the reality of our dependence upon His grace. People, one way to put it is, you get grace. And I could, if I wanted to, make a list on one sheet of paper, people who I know get grace. Doesn't mean there's not more, but the ones that I know. And, you're one of those, and that not only blesses me and blesses other believers and blesses your audience, it even blesses, I'm guessing, the people that you're talking to who are still outside the kingdom. That humility, it's not a humility about the truthfulness of the gospel. It's a humility about our own capabilities that I think can be very disarming with those outside the kingdom.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think there are so many opportunities to do a better job with it as well. One of the benefits, we was just talking before we went, live on air, that, one of the benefits of being in relationship with these people to record an interview is often there's a relationship afterwards, become connected on LinkedIn, and so you then get a view into each other's lives. And I've got people that I've had lots of contact with, who I've recorded with sort of 5-6 months ago, and I sort of see the way that they talk. They've bought into positive affirmations, for an example, talking into the fact that speaking into existence that they're powerful, or they're rich and stuff, and I if anybody's willing to pray for me who's listening to this, just pray for wisdom and boldness for knowing how to, be bold in having those conversations when it's appropriate for me to say there's a better way than that, and I've tried to, it's funny, I didn't know that we was going to talk about this today, but a week ago, maybe even a weekend, I looked at my LinkedIn profile and I thought, what would someone's first impression be if they was to look at me afresh? Like, if I'd only just become friends with them, what would their opinion be of me? It made me review it, or I just completely changed it because, I looked at it and thought, I wouldn't even be aware that you're a Christian, really. And I just don't want to miss any opportunity. And I know LinkedIn isn't designed for that. People would, poo-poo the fact that you'd even say you talk about religion on there anyway, but I don't want to miss any opportunities. And certainly, like you said, there are relationships, there are doors opening to have relationships with people that I've gotten well with. And how do I steward that relationship? Because it would be really disappointing to think that I had an opportunity to share the gospel with somebody one day, and I didn't take that opportunity.
Amen. Well, speaking of opportunities and sharing, before we say goodbye, if people wanted to subscribe to anything that you're doing, how would they do that?
Well, the first one to subscribe to for sure would be Exposit the Word.
Uh-huh.
So on YouTube, we've got a website as well. It's exposittheword.com. I think we've got about 2,000 free resources now on there.
Wait, say that again slower so people hear that.
We've got about 2,000 free resources on there.
2,000 free resources, and that's interviews with people about their conversions, answers to difficult questions, chapter by chapter on the Bible.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things.
Classic sermons is something else that we're doing now as well.
Yes.
Yeah, we're recording sermons for, Ryle and Spurgeon and Pink and all that.
All duly footnoted and referenced straight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's on exposittheword.com or look it up on YouTube, and I pray and hope that you'll be blessed through that. If you do, if you've got an interest in business and you want to learn from some people that have, had a good go at it and been successful, then talkbusinesswith.com would be the place to go to. There's a YouTube channel as well called Talk Business With. It's on both of them are on all of the podcast, all of the normal podcast channels as well.
Okay, terrific. Well, thank you so much. When I get off, I'm going to come up with another segment that I can add to the rotation on Jesus Changes Everything so we can get you back. It is always such a pleasure and a delight to speak with you. I want you to know that Lisa and I pray for you and your boys and your wife all the time, that we love you, we miss you, and look forward to seeing you whenever God should so allow.
I'd love that. Love you too, mate. Thanks a lot for your time.
You betcha.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Jesus Changes Everything podcast, a production of Dunamis Fellowship, the teaching outreach of Dr. R.C. Sproul Jr. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we encourage you to subscribe, which you can do at all the usual outlets, to tell your friends, and to spread the word. To learn more about the work of Dunamis Fellowship, please visit rcsproulJR.com. And join us next time on Jesus Changes Everything.